You holler when you want me to start.
Okay, well, Pat, why don't we go ahead? Since we just have an hour together, we'll go ahead and I'm sure others will join us.
And thank you so much for coming. I'm Pat Heyer. I'm chairman of the Community Foundation Board and a volunteer myself, and I see other board members. Thank you so much for joining us today. I just wanted to take a minute for all of us to breathe and think about what a transition this year has been. We've had to figure out, each one of us in our own organizations or in our partnerships or even you as donors, how to pivot and become continuing to connect with those people who matter to our organizations and our partnerships and our donors. You matter to us so much. We couldn't do our work here at the foundation without all of you behind us. So thank you for joining us in this platform. I think this is our second one, Jessica. It's a confined way. It only takes an hour of your time, but we so appreciate the opportunity to connect with each of our partners, with the donors who want to stay with us, and all of those who are doing great work in the community. So thanks for being with us. We'll try to be brief, but we want to stay connected to you. And I hope we might be able to do this again in the future. It's yours, Jess.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I think I know most folks in the call, but I'm Jessica Wergo on the foundation staff, and wanted to reiterate Pat's welcome to everyone. It's exciting to see so many familiar faces, but also to see so many people that are involved with the work that we're going to talk about today. Many of you could probably say with much more flourish and insight what we've been doing at the foundation than even I and the staff can. So hopefully we'll have some good opportunity later in the session to have some discussion about what we've been doing and also what you all have been doing in the community. So as Pat said, this is the second session we had. Back in December, we did our first Zoom series just to give an update on what the foundation has been doing and to hear from some of our partners. And we got really good feedback that this was just a great way to engage folks, particularly as we're not able to get together in person as much. So we're going to continue to do these quarterly. So this morning, I will show you a little bit about what we've been doing at the foundation at the end of 2020 and moving into 2021. And then we're really fortunate to have Chris Stafford here from Pulaski County Public Schools, who's going to talk a little bit about scholarships at the foundation and the work that we've been able to do with him and his team. And then Kevin Bird with the NRV Regional Commission, who's going to talk a little bit about the partnership the foundation has with the Commission for the Livability Initiative. So you can see a bit more in depth from some partners. And even though, we're going to be presenting, this is a time to also have conversations. So you're welcome to include questions in the chat. And then of course, later on, we'll have a time to talk with one another as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen so we can all look at some pretty pictures. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So first off, I'm just going to talk a little bit about recent activities at the foundation, some of which you'll know about, others that hopefully will be new and exciting to get a sense of the work we've been doing over the last few months. So first, kind of talking a little bit about 2020. Some of you were with us back in December where we talked about our grant programs and how we approached 2020. But really, the idea last year was to get as much money out the door as possible to nonprofits as they were trying to navigate the pandemic. So we had a record year of grants and scholarships last year, over $576,000 that we awarded. And the vast majority of that money was operating support for nonprofits. We intentionally only gave operating grants so we could provide maximum flexibility to nonprofits as they were trying to figure out how they could continue their work during COVID. It was also an incredible year of generosity from our donors. So we raised well over $1 million for new endowments that were created and continued growth of endowments at the foundation. And many of the folks on this call were actively involved in fundraising and can speak to how much generosity we saw from donors who, as they were capable last year, really gave to support the community during a difficult time. We also held many workshops and events, many Zoom calls that you all have been on. And While they were virtual, we felt like we needed to continue to provide information as much as possible to nonprofits, but just also a chance to connect however we could, and to continue to foster those relationships, even if they were from afar. And then I know that we have some founding board members of the foundation on this call, so I'm hoping that you are excited to see our asset base now has exceeded $13 million and continues to grow. So lots of good stuff as we finished out 2020. But like most nonprofits, the foundation never rests on its laurels. We always know there's more work to do. So we have hit the ground running in 2021 with all of our different programs. So as you know, a big part of the foundation's work is capacity building and leadership development for nonprofits. So we've continued to hold listening sessions monthly on different aspects of nonprofit management. This year, we've focused on fundraising. We've talked about the COVID vaccine and its impacts on employers. We did a great session last month on self-care for nonprofit leaders, so important. And then just this morning, some of you were on that call too, we had a fantastic session on diversity, equity, and inclusion and the concept of cultural humility, which I think gave us a lot to think about and some great discussion from how nonprofits are addressing DEI. You are probably also familiar with Give Local NRV. This is our online giving platform. So nonprofits can have a profile on the site and raise money for their organizations. And then we host an annual online giving day. And even though that doesn't come until June, work on that starts the previous fall. So we have been getting ready for the giving day, registering nonprofits, recruiting sponsors, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we've got coming up with that. Another key aspect of the foundation's work is what we call our collaborative network. So these are dozens of organizations that are working together on particular issue areas, and the foundation will provide administrative support, convene the groups, provide some funding. So NRV Thrive focuses on food assistance. We publish a food assistance directory every year. This includes over 50 different food assistance organizations. So your backpack programs, food pantries. It talks about eligibility requirements for each one, what kind of food they provide, and how to get in contact with them. We were also excited this year to partner with New River Community Action, which does a needs assessment every 3 years. And we have good data about the extent of food insecurity in the New River Valley. But what we don't know as much about is how we're meeting that need. How well are we meeting the need of those who need assistance? So we're working right now on a survey of all of our food assistance organizations to get a sense of how many people they serve, how many pounds of food or meals that they deliver, where are their gaps in services, and how can we support that better? And then finally, one of the most exciting aspects of this network has been that it's created an opportunity for organizations to share excess food. So sometimes they may have a donation of a fresh food item that they can't distribute that day, but they can't store it either. So now they have a forum where they can give that food over to another food pantry that can distribute it. And that's largely been happening just over an email listserv. But we're working with a group of students to create an app and a website that will facilitate that. So a lot of good work happening in this area. And as you know, over the past year, food assistance has been all the more important. And it's been exciting to see how these organizations have stepped up in meeting that need. I know we've got some folks on the call who are also involved with another initiative, First Steps. This is our network focused on early childhood education and development, and really focused on those first 5 years of life, how critically important they are for children and families. So this work has been going on since 2016 and has continued through COVID. Of course, we've got a fancy new logo and some branding, which is wonderful to raise the profile of our work. This group has continued to hold virtual sessions, and just earlier this year, we had a fantastic panel discussion around supporting young children through COVID. So this included folks that talked about how do we support young children with virtual education, mental and behavioral health resources. How do you discipline children in this really strange and kind of traumatic environment? And how do you make sure you're keeping up with just basic physical health and going to do your checkups with children during COVID? And then finally, we're about to announce our Early Childhood Champion Awards. So these are just recognizing educators, human service providers, and just advocates for young children and families, again, to raise the profile of the importance of these professionals. And I think for those on the call who have young children or grandchildren, you know, over the past year in particular, it's been clear how very important childcare and all those support services are to the community. And we want to be able to emphasize that further. Of course, folks know us mostly for the grants and scholarships that we award, and these are made possible by over 200 different endowments that we have at the foundation. We've continued to start new ones this year. So in particular, we started one, the Shirley Van Dresser Guidance Fund. This was started by Shirley's 6 daughters who wanted to honor her after her passing earlier this year. And as you talk to her daughters, you get a sense of just how passionate she was about working with students. So she saw her role as a guidance counselor here in Montgomery County, not just as supporting academics or scholarships, but really providing that additional support that kids need to be able to succeed. So this fund will provide grants to guidance departments at all of the public school systems across the New River Valley, to help them with materials or programmatic components so they can provide that kind of service. And there's a great article on our website that talks further about Shirley, the impact that she had on the students she worked with, and just the wonderful memories that her daughters shared. We also continue to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion at the foundation. And we created in 2020 a DEI task force that includes members of our board as well as other community members. And this group is really looking at all aspects of the foundation's work through this DEI lens. So our grant making, our scholarships, our investments, and trying to think about how we are living up to our values when it comes to equity. We've been really committed to making sure that we're making progress, however small that might be, each month that we're meeting. So earlier this year, we created some tools to better understand the diversity of our scholarship recipients and get a sense of how we might be able to reach out to different groups that we're not serving as well with those scholarships. We've also been holding a series of listening sessions with different organizations that have underrepresented populations as part of their constituencies. We really want to hear during those conversations about the needs of the particular groups that they serve, but also how they see the foundation supporting their work. So we had a great session back in March with the community group, Dialogue on Race, and the NAACP. And then we've got sessions coming up focused on individuals with disabilities, different faith-based organizations. We'll talk to more grantees and a lot of different groups just to spend some time listening and learning. And of course, the most fun that we have at the foundation is when we give out money. And so we just announced at the end of last month our 2021 scholarship recipients. And it was another record year for us in terms of scholarships. We're going to be giving out over $117,000 to 79 students. 1 in 5 of them are first generation, so first in their family to go to college. And as you can see just from the quote here, it's wonderful to hear the stories of the students, to learn about them and how the foundation scholarships support them financially, but also become a vote of confidence in their ability to succeed in college and beyond. It's always a really humbling and inspiring experience to read scholarship applications. And we were pleased this year to be able to continue to do that work and again, give out a lot of different scholarships to students across the region. So with that, I'm going to pause because I think it's helpful to hear directly from folks who have been involved in creating scholarship funds or work with young students about the importance of these. So I'll stop sharing. And Chris, I wonder if I could turn it over to you and you would talk a little bit about the Joanne Slate Smith Fund and just your position at Pulaski.
Thank you, Jessica. Good morning. My name is Chris Stafford. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Business Operations here at Pulaski County Public Schools. And Jessica invited me to join you this morning. I appreciate the opportunity, I guess, to share our positive experience we've had in working with the Community Foundation. I'll have to say that I have a personal, before we did this transaction, I already had a personal relationship with Jessica and my own experience in with a endowed fund that I set up in memory of both my parents after they passed away, that benefits the Humane Society of Pulaski County. So I already had a very positive experience, personally with that. So it that made it much more much easier and a greater comfort level when we made this decision about our scholarship. So about 10 or so years ago, we had a donor come to us, a gentleman whose aunt passed away, and she was a longtime math educator here in Pulaski County. She taught at the original Pulaski High School and the old Pulaski High School. And then when the consolidated high school, Pulaski County High School, was opened, she taught there. In fact, she was my ninth grade Algebra 2 teacher. And so don't hold that against her. But she, I turned out okay, I think. But she, so after she had passed away, she had no, she was never married and had no children, and her nephew was her executor, and a great part of her or some of her estate. He set up a scholarship, the Joanne Slate Smith Scholarship for math education, and came to us. And honestly, that was probably the first time we had someone from within our school come to us and with that kind of that sizable amount of money to set up a scholarship. In fact, we set up at that time, we set up our own education foundation just to accept that scholarship and give the donor the obviously the tax benefits that he wanted. However, I'll say that our education foundation really never took off in terms of we had a great deal of difficulty trying to keep volunteers to keep it active. We didn't have we had some donors come forward to make small donations, but really that was the only sizable donation that we had received at that time. So we went a number of years trying to manage that fund on our own, mostly keeping it in certificates or in a certificate of deposit. And if you all know what CD rates have been for the past however many years, they just don't generate a lot of money. And, and unfortunately, we just don't have the resources or the manpower to try to manage something like that on our own. So we gave a few scholarships, but really it was just kind of riding along, and really we didn't feel like we were getting the return that we needed on a donation of that size. And so in 2018, we made the decision, our school system, to really reach out to the Community Foundation to see, what kind of partnership could we do with this scholarship to really make it grow. And, we want to use that money to help other Pulaski County students succeed. So we actually reached out first to the original donor and got his permission to actually tweak the scholarship a little bit and expand the criteria from strictly math education to STEM field. So we felt like we could reach a greater number of students. And then with Jessica's help, in December of 2018, we signed an agreement and transferred that money to the Community Foundation. And I would just say it's been a very successful partnership in just 3 years. I think, the first couple years we gave, I think $2,000 scholarships were awarded both those years. And then this year, we have two $2,000 scholarships that are being awarded to Pulaski County students. In fact, I had the opportunity Tuesday night at our school board meeting. One of the scholarship recipients is the student representative to the school board. And so I had an opportunity to speak to her just a couple nights ago, and she was just so excited about receiving that award. And so I would just say that it's been just a very benefit. In 3 years, we really have given, or the Community Foundation has given more scholarships than we ever did in the previous 10 years that we had the money. So if somebody were to come forward to me today, knock on my door, and they had a large donation to set up a scholarship, an endowed scholarship, I think the first thing I would do would be to pick up the phone and call Jessica, and I would do the same thing all over again. It's just been a great experience for us, and especially to see those students, benefit from those scholarships. And I will say, for Pulaski County, we do have a great number of first generation students in our county, and that's just the demographics of our community. And so those scholarships are just so important. We have a scholarship assembly every year at the end of the year at Pulaski County High School, and all of those scholarships are celebrated. And it's not just seen as something that's extra. It's actually for many of those families, it's actually seen as something that's necessary for them to have the ability to go to college. And again, many of those students are first generation. So it is a really rewarding experience to see those recipients at the end of the school year, their senior year, being recognized for those scholarships. So I would just have to say, from Pulaski County Public Schools, I want to thank you all for helping us and for helping our students.
Thanks so much, Chris. Helpful to hear about the experience. And I think one of the things we always enjoy when folks start new endowments with us like that, scholarships from different parts of the county, is that it not only is about that individual scholarship, but it also helps the students to come find all the other scholarships that we have at the foundation. So the more that we get new funds, they get to see the 40 others that we have, many of which they're also eligible for. And so it just gets that money spread around even further. And Pulaski County is one of those areas we really wanted to focus on. So this partnership has been great. So thank you, Chris, for sharing that and your experience. And we're going to be celebrating those scholarship students in May with an outdoor picnic this year, to be able to have our donors and scholarship recipients safely get to meet one another, which is probably the most fun we have all year, quite frankly, is the scholarship event. So that's one aspect of our work, of course, but you all know that we do a lot of different partnerships in the community, and these are some of the most fulfilling ways that the foundation sort of leverages what we do with all the other work that's going on in the community. So since 2011, I believe the foundation's been a part of the Livability Initiative. We took part in the 3-year planning process that was led by the Regional Commission. And then in 2014 decided, because that work had been so helpful and meaningful to us, to continue that partnership with the Regional Commission and move forward the goals and strategies that are in that regional plan. And that has been hugely helpful to the foundation to better understand the needs of the community, and also to have a stronger relationship with local government partners in the region. So Kevin, I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about that partnership and just how long we've worked together.
Yeah, absolutely, Jess. Thanks for the invite, and good to see everybody this morning. Well, scholarship may be your first favorite day, but maybe your second favorite day is the Livability convening event that we do every year, right? Yeah, we've done that for a number of years now, coming out of the planning process, and that is truly one of my favorite days of the year, because we get to bring partners together across the region that are doing good work and highlighting that and building networks and relationships. But yeah, so I want to share some thoughts about the Livability Initiative partnership and just how, I guess from an angle of partnership and leading organizations, and how this has just worked out extremely well for both of our organizations and has led to so many other opportunities as a result. But first off, this program, Livability Initiative, we applied for these federal funds in 2009, I guess it was, and they came to the region in 2010. And this is a time when I was new to this role and Jess was coming into her role at the foundation. And we were pulling together partners that had not worked together before, but that was because the federal agencies had the foresight to say, you have to create a collaborative if you're going to do this kind of work. And your collaborative should have at least 9 members, and it should have a composition including community foundations, local governments, transit providers, environmental advocates. The feds had a lot of great foresight there. And when we made the application, we identified partners, but we didn't have a lot of, we knew of each other, but not a lot of experience in working together. So that 3-year process gave us a chance to navigate those. The intention of the feds at the time is that they would put planning money out and that they would have a follow-up with implementation money. So we had that hope at the end that we would have, competitive applications going in to implement. Well, Congress never appropriated the second tranche of funds for implementation. Yet we had gone through this 3-year process with all these partners and realized what we had was fairly unique relationships that were bolstered and excited to do some good things. So how are we going to take that on? And that's when we had a Livability Leadership Group that had some very intentional conversations about, what are the strengths of the Regional Commission? What are the strengths of the foundation? We know implementation money is not there, but how do we continue this network and evolve? So I think through that honest look within our organizations, it made the most sense to transfer the planning process from our organization, which is primarily focused on planning, to the foundation that is obviously focused on giving funds to communities to help implement program. Yet we needed to stay closely aligned. And how do we do that? So that was staying closely aligned, thankfully, has worked over a number of years after the fact. And we're probably one of the few regions in the country that received that initial infusion of planning funds that has continued to be diligent about communicating around our efforts from several years ago. So we continue to meet monthly as a leadership team, and that is really facilitated by the Community Foundation. Thankfully, Jess is there and keeps everybody engaged on a monthly basis. That group is kind of twofold. One part is looking at the big picture around the region about things that are happening that we hear about through our own networks. And another part is about planning for those external type of events, whether that's the convening we do each spring, or if it's, we did a meet the grantors type of event a couple of years ago where a lot of the state and federal agencies came together, and we had around 80 people participate in that, I believe. So one part, thinking about what's happening in our communities, what efforts could use some support, and then what is it that we could do from a training or capacity building perspective that would be a benefit to everybody. I will say that as we were navigating that change of model from a funded planning exercise into this non-funded network and capacity building model, it took a lot of education of both of our boards to understand what this was going to involve. So I'd encourage you that if you're ever navigating those circumstances where you don't have money readily available, but you know that there is value in continuing, it's educating the people that have that decision-making authority around the money to understand that you're going to invest some time and energy into this because it's for the good. And it's hard because you don't have something tangible you can give them on paper and say, here is like a program that you might see through the organization typically, but there is inherent value in that. So educating board members along the way has been important. Another perspective of the partnership piece here that was really helpful to me as I was growing into this role was that shedding that feeling of ownership. I think that once we received this funding. It was $1 million to the region to plan. We had never received in this region that kind of money to do planning work. And we had this strong sense of needing to be successful with that. But once we had this partnership established over the planning process, it's like, okay, there's collective ownership now, and needing the ability to create that collective ownership and finding the strategy to be able to do that. And then thankfully Foundation stepping up and saying, yeah, we want to shepherd this forward, I think is an important thing to realize. One is always going into a project with partnership in mind is something that we have evolved into, is that we're getting ready to kick something off. Okay, who else needs to be around the table and has a voice to contribute or some way to participate? And then the other part is that recognition that you're not on your own for success. You need to create that space for collective stewardship. And organizations or partners will stand up when given the opportunity, and a genuine opportunity as well is so important with that. Two last points here. I think what's been important in a non-funded network support that we've done is consistency. Jess highlighted several programs at the front of this, and they are consistently meeting. The partners know how they can plug in consistently, and that is so important. It doesn't have to be a monthly, it might be quarterly, but there's a known engagement point that the Community Foundation has provided through this, whether that's the leadership team that meets monthly, or if it's those capacity building things. We're being consistent and intentional. Another part of that consistency is that you have somebody that does feel like they have some ownership and responsibility. Because if we all approach this as, well, it's the Community Foundation's, it's not, it's all of ours, but it just does have an elevated role of responsibility in this to make sure we are meeting regularly. She's chasing us around a lot on the email saying, don't forget about that. And I'm often guilty of having to be chased. So thank you. But I truly appreciate, and I think others do too, that there is someone that's calling the meetings that we can rely on. So when you're having a partnership, somebody naturally needs to have a responsibility role that's a little elevated. And then the last thing I'd pass along is that Jess has obviously communicated a lot of what the foundation brings to the region and can contribute to, but don't ever assume that they are always going to be the one that can do it for everybody. I think that happens to us sometimes too on occasions. We get into something and they say, oh, well, they've got, the capacity to do it. Well, it's never really our intention is to do everything for everybody. So don't just try to pile on because they are good at it. It's think about, okay, how can I contribute so they can be successful in doing it? There's been lots of lessons learned over the years of partnership, and I think collective ownership and stewardship are so important. And it's just been great to be able to have these honest and frank conversations over the years about, okay, how do we approach this next thing? Or looking back and say, well, we probably could have done that a little bit better, and how we better the next time. So that's some observations of our partnership. Did I miss anything, Jess, that you were hoping I'd hit on?
No, not at all. Kevin, you did, as always, a great job at capturing the value that the Livability Initiative has brought, and particularly the partnership. I think for the foundation, this has been a way for us to understand needs in the community in a totally different way, not just what we hear from nonprofits and their grant applications, but what we're seeing across different sectors and what roles we can play that foundations may not typically play. So how do we relate to economic development and other aspects that we're traditionally not giving grants in, but we can play a role. And so it's been exciting to be part of those opportunities and to learn through it as well. As you said, it's been a great learning experience and just a good opportunity to meet other passionate people doing good work. Yeah, good.
I might offer some real quick, Jess.
Yeah.
I think there's many folks that are on the call this morning that are aware of some of these collaborative impact projects. The Prices Fork School rehab is one that often comes up right offhand. Those sort of things would not have happened had we not gone through that visioning process as a region, and then had the organizations to be able to plug and play at critical points in time to be able to secure multi-million-dollar investment in what has become a terrific community asset in a rural community. So there's lots of those examples that take place. And that, again, on the front end, you don't necessarily see on paper, here is a program we're going to go follow, but the end result of those networks can be extremely impactful. So thanks, Jess.
Absolutely. And I would just kind of add to that, Kevin, that one of the things that we've really seen in the last year is just how good the New River Valley is at collaborating. And I think sometimes we see so much the differences between our different communities or between the different geographic regions, but the New River Valley is just very well known for being collaborative and willing to work together. And I think the fact that there are existing collaborative relationships that might be, excuse me, the networks the foundation works with, the work the regional commission does, to see how quickly those spun up in response to the demands of COVID was truly impressive, whether it's the public health task force that Kevin has been deeply involved with, or the different Thrive and First Steps networks that we've worked with, or the Focus network that some folks may know over in Giles County. I mean, extraordinary work that happened very quickly to support our community. And it's because we've invested so much time in collaborating. So it's been helpful to see that and to be able to tell those stories. I'm going to share my screen one more time to talk a little bit about things that are coming up at the foundation before we move forward just to having some conversation. So everybody can see that. I hope. Give me a quick thumbs up if you can. Okay. So just wanted to talk a little bit about things that we have coming up at the foundation before we move into questions and conversation. So first off, as I said, we love giving away money. So we are moving into all the planning for our responsive grant program. This is the annual grant program we always do, providing funding to nonprofits across the region. In 2020, as I mentioned, we only awarded operating grants, and we've chosen to do that again in 2021 because the feedback we received was just how important that flexibility was, particularly as other funding sources were tight. So we'll be offering operating support. That application is online and opens in May. We'll have a grant writing listening session that's focused on writing grants broadly and specifically to the foundation to support nonprofits before they apply. And then that deadline comes in July. So for those nonprofits on the phone, we're looking forward to being able to read your applications. And we hope that we'll be able to celebrate in person as we did here in this picture back in 2019. Hope we might be able to have our grantee luncheon in November just to meet one another again and talk about the great projects folks are doing. I mentioned Give Local NRV coming up quick, and Ashley on my staff has been doing a great job at getting ready for our Giving Day. We started this in 2014 and have raised over $1.6 million for nonprofits through this platform. So our Giving Day is coming up in June. We've got a lot of sponsors who are helping us to offer incentive grants to the participating nonprofits just to help them with that extra push they need to promote themselves, to tell their stories, and to raise money for the good work that they do. We're hoping to raise at least $430,000. We'll give out at least $15,000 in grants and prizes that day. And while the Giving Day itself is on June 23rd, and that's when you can see our leaderboards and how great everybody is doing, we do have early giving. So any gift that comes in between June 1st and June 23rd counts for that organization towards their totals to earn those grants and prizes. So I just encourage you, if you've got organizations that you love to support, make sure that they're on that Give Local platform, read their stories and help promote their pages. This has just been a great opportunity to raise the profile of nonprofits in the region. Also, some other things we have going on. We're excited this year to launch the 1994 Society. So the foundation was founded in 1994, and we have some of those folks that are in this picture on the call with us today, looking a little bit different, but still deeply engaged in the work of the foundation. I've been involved with the foundation actually since 2005 and had the chance to serve with some of these folks on the board. And what was clear to me from the very beginning is that small gifts really add up and make a big difference. Most community foundations across the country will start with a single large contribution. That was not the case for us. This was very grassroots. Everybody can be a philanthropist, as I said, and can come in and contribute to their community. So we want to be able to honor that legacy and to grow a new generation of donors who are giving back to their community. So we're starting this society this year, where folks will give a minimum of $19.94 per month, a small amount to support the Fund for the NRV. That's the funding source at the foundation that we use to support all of our collaborations, our leadership development, our grants and scholarships. And we'll have some events and opportunities for these folks to learn about one another and about the community that they're in, and hopefully as a way to keep them connected to this region and to continue to give back. And then we always have tons of events going on. And so I won't read through all of these, but here are some of the things that we have going on over the next few months. And just highlighting a couple of those, as Kevin said, you know, the livability work is really about constantly looking through what's needed in the community, what conversations can we continue to have. And to that end, we've got a series coming up on housing in the New River Valley that will discuss both the recent housing study and some really interesting findings from that, as well as a resource guide that's been developed by the Regional Commission with partners to help navigate the different housing needs that we have in the region. So those are going to be some great sessions. We've got listening sessions continuing to come up around both grant writing and Give Local. And then we've got some additional events just to help raise the profile of the foundation, like at Eastern Divide, the Montgomery Museum, one of our partners, and of course that online giving day. So all of our events are on our website where you can learn more about those. We hope you'll be able to take part, particularly as we start to do a few things outdoors, in person to see one another again, and of course registrations on those sites as well. So I'll pause there. That was all the sort of song and dance that I had this morning. But we do have many people on the call, some great organizations that we've had the chance to work with. Certainly many of our donors and partners are here. So I'll just open it up if anyone has any questions or comments that they want to add, or if not, we'll kind of draw some folks out as well. And anything you want to share either about your experience with the foundation or what you would like to see the foundation doing going forward. Any additions? And of course, for our board members on the call, if you'd like to add in anything too, please do. Any questions? Pat, anything you wanted to add or questions from partners?
No, nothing I wanted to add in particular, except every time we have one of these, I learn a few more things. So I did go to some of the livability things years and years and years ago, and I have all their documents, and I know that the Aging in Place team is part of an outgrowth of that. So it was great to hear from Kevin about what's going on now. And I too love those events where we heard about what progress had been made. And I'm really looking forward to being inside the Prices Fork School project soon.
Absolutely.
I have a question about the 1994 Foundation. I saw dear Lindsay West standing there front and center in your picture. Is this something we just can sign up to on the webpage?
Yep, exactly. So if you go to our website under giving, you'll see the 1994 Society there, and it will take you directly to a special page to contribute. Yeah. And thanks, Susan. And we're really hopeful. I mean, you know, of course, all those faces in that picture, I mean, gosh, you know, so many sort of titans of leadership in the New River Valley to honor. But I remember, for some folks may know that I started with the foundation as a volunteer. I sat on the board for a little while, and I used to sit next to Lindsay at the board meetings, and she would ask my opinion. I was 26 years old. And she would be like, well, Jess, what do you think about this? And I'm like, I have no business answering this question, Lindsay. You know, I don't even know what the heck I'm doing. And she was like, no, you know, we want to hear from you. And I think that spirit is what we're trying to get in the society, is there are so many people that have so much to add in terms of leadership and giving, not just financially, but we hope this is a way for them to get involved and kind of honor that, that insight that I know Lindsay and many others brought to the table. And I know Ben Crawford on this call and Steve Jarris also kind of involved with that work from the beginning. Yeah. Other questions, folks, or comments?
I just want to make a comment. I'm so thankful for the Community Foundation. When back in the days, I was on the Montgomery County Education Foundation around 2010 when we were trying to rejuvenate something that has been dormant from, I think, 1980s. Community Foundation, helped us a lot to manage, our finances and providing the pass-through funds. And obviously, you're still continuing to do so. And, just personal appreciation, it has been very helpful. And since then, Montgomery County Education Foundation doing well. I'm no longer on their board, but as I am, finishing up being a board member on the school board, I'm looking forward to more involvement either with the Community Foundation and or going back to Montgomery County Education Foundation. But I just wanted to, shout out you guys.
Thanks, Kendon. That's been another great example of another partnership, and the Montgomery County Educational Foundation gives out over $30,000 a year to
Absolutely.
Programs for teachers, guidance counselors, and it's been, sometimes I think people think that they start a fund with us and then they kind of walk away, and that is not how it works at all. Our donors are really deeply engaged in the whole process, and the Educational Foundation is a good example of that. I know we've got some folks from the Giles Fund on here as well, our Arts Alliance endowment that can speak to. It's just always a really way to involve folks in the process. We try to make that first and foremost.
A comment more than a question, but when I see the review of all of the programs and new directions, it's so impressive thinking about the changes that have occurred since 1994. And I really appreciate your leadership, Jess, because I think that you're constantly looking to branch out into new areas, and it's really amazing to see what has been accomplished in our small town. So
thanks, Rosemary.
Yeah, and thanks, Jess, and thanks, Laura and Pat, for your incredible leadership, and also a shout out to Ben Crawford and to Jim Schatz, two icons and pillars of the community for many years. I appreciate being in your company.
Absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Other comments or areas where you feel like the foundation needs to focus more?
I'm wondering whether anybody on this screen as a donor used the giving book that you opened up this year.
Yep.
You want to say something about that? I'd love to hear what others, if anybody used that and found it useful, because it's a new tool.
Yeah, and for folks on the call, and I think there are some that use that, our online systems allow us to have what we called an online grant catalog. So every grant that came in through the foundation grant application was loaded into this online tool. Our donors could, through that online tool, assign funding from their fund to the grants that they wanted to be able to support. And then new last year was this public component. So we were able to advertise to the public that individuals could come in and contribute to help fund grants and really see what the immediate needs were in the community. And an additional $10,000 came in through that public component. But I know I'm going to kind of call out, I know the Giles Fund, so Alan and Ann and Steve and Rosemary, I don't know if you used it as well.
Yeah, we did.
It's an online tool, if you had any feedback for us on that.
I think it's always more efficient to go with electronic and save postage and paper and printing and all of that. So yeah, I thought it was a good idea.
Great.
Well, what I liked about it was the idea that those grant applications can then be more public, so other people could see A, what we had already funded, and B, what was still left on the table unaddressed. And so people had a place to donate and they knew what they were giving their money to.
Exactly. Yeah. Anne, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was blabbing with my mute on, but I particularly this year, given the sort of general emergency, speaking both for the Giles Fund and Giles Early Education Project, I very much appreciated the flexibility of, we saw a couple of times, we saw an immediate need and the foundation responded. We were able, within a week. The first thing that comes to mind is when the Giles County schools close like this, and so many of our kids are in such remote areas and we're so far from the internet, but we were able to distribute art supplies to all these children. And I think we made that request, and it might have been funneled through Jeep, but then the Giles Fund called headquarters and we had it like that. And it was great because everyone was sort of in a panic. What's happening for these children? And the instant response and your ideas for how we could get things. I think another example was a few scholarships for the children when the Giles County schools were closed. So Kids and Company and Imaginations stations ran programs for school-age kids, and you helped us find some scholarship for some of those kids also very quickly. So thank you.
Good story.
I appreciate that, Anne. Thank you. Any other comments or questions or suggestions for the foundation? Well, as we end our time, as I said, we've got a lot coming up. We are going to be doing these sessions quarterly as just an opportunity to update you and to take kind of a deeper dive from speakers on a couple different aspects of our work, but it's always a little challenging to figure out what to squeeze into the PowerPoint because we have all sorts of stuff going on all the time that I couldn't fit in here. So if you ever have questions or ideas for the foundation, you're always welcome to contact me. We also, Laura Pinn and Ashley Agee on my staff are also on the call. Great resources for us and for the community, and of course our board members as well. And I can't reiterate enough that we're really focused on learning as much as possible and trying to be creative where we can if we see a need. So if there are opportunities in the work that you do that you feel like the foundation needs to be part of that conversation, or we need to learn more, or we need to make a change in the way we're doing something, I can't emphasize enough how much we want to hear about that and be thoughtful about what we can do more for the community. So any final thoughts, or Pat, anything you want to do to send us off?
No, just thanks so very much for all of you joining us in this call today so that we could at least stay in touch. That matters to us so much, to stay in touch with our donors and our partners and our collaborators. That's what we're all about. And Zoom is now going to be the way to do it. So thanks so much for being with us.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Kevin, and everybody have a good afternoon. Bye, everyone.